Hi and welcome to my channel. It's your girl Anita Okanibijo. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this is your first time, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and invite your friends and colleagues to subscribe as well. Now, to my old subscribers, you guys are the real MVP. Thank you so much for your continuous support. Today, we're going to be having an amazing guest who is going to be taking us through how to build a thriving business in a challenging environment. Now, if that is something you're interested in, don't go anywhere. Hi, welcome back everyone. With me here is the amazing and wonderful Mr. Mecca Oluwola, the managing partner of Zenera Consulting, to take us through how to build a thriving business in a challenging environment. Mr. Mecca, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Anita. My name is Mecca Oluwola, and like Anita said, I'm the managing partner of Zenera Consulting. I also serve on the board of several startups and established businesses. I've done a lot of communication work for the past 23, 24 years. And I've seen, my career evolve from communications to core business strategy. In the last 5 years, I've done a lot of work with, consulting for established businesses on how to take their enterprises to another level. I've also had the privilege of working with a number of startups and spin-offs from our clients who then went on to do new and amazing incursions into new territories. All right, so my background remains oil and gas and sustainability consulting. So my close to 25 years experience has seen me traversing various industries, banking, advertising, oil and gas, like I said, and then Zenera Consulting, which is pretty much what we've done for the last 8 years.
Wow. Now, let's start off by asking, we have some questions we're going to ask, and I'm sure that our viewers will be, looking forward to the great wealth that you bring to this table. So, my first question would be, what are the fundamental steps to take when starting a business?
So, I think the first thing is to define your purpose, your ethos, and the objectives that
why you want to go into that business.
Why you want to go into that business, because that drives your value proposition, right? And many times it's extremely important that you place that before your financial objectives, right? Because money chases after value, and not the other way around. When you focus on delivering value, inevitably you get prosperous.
Money will come to you.
Because people will exchange that value with their own resources. Exactly. And that's the way it works. So you need to get that right from the outset. What problem am I solving? What value am I adding? How am I resourcing the next person? Who am I helping out with the product or the enterprise that I'm setting up? Once you have defined that very clearly and you're certain about the things that you've tested the market, you're sure that this is a viable business, and there's somebody who needs it, right? So it's not enough to come up with a fantastic product or a fantastic service. There must be somebody who needs that solution.
Okay. So if I can hear you right, it's important to define what you want to do, why you want to do it, and people who need, for whom you, Wow, amazing.
Because you must, in the space that we're privileged to occupy, we've seen a lot of solutions. We're looking for problems to solve because the problems don't really exist.
So there should be a problem first, then you now define the solution to that problem, and not the other way around.
Yes, and not the other way around. And so once you get to the point where you have clarity regarding your objectives, right? you can then start to work backwards by what we call a business plan, right? Start to develop a business plan. Many people take it for granted, and they just have things scribbled down. And I've seen people literally come to me, with a notebook and say, I have this fantastic idea. Yes, I have this fantastic idea. I said, okay, so how do we translate it into strategy? How do we go about to execute it and to implement? When you start to then ask questions, you then realize that they haven't thought through properly. Yeah. So what writing a business plan does is it allows you to test your hypothesis, test your thinking, the scenarios
before you go into
before you even go into the real life.
Yeah.
Right? You're envisaging, you're thinking about, what problems you're likely to encounter and how you're going to navigate them. Do you understand? Because all businesses go through teething problems. Do you understand? There's no matter how much money you have from the outset, if you have 500 million naira, it doesn't really matter. There are certain things that you must circumvent, there are certain challenges that you must be able to surmount, right? And those are only possible when you have sat down to articulate your business plan very clearly.
So you did mention challenges and problems. So that takes us to the next question. So what are the major challenges faced by startups in a developing country, and how can the entrepreneurs overcome those challenges?
So for developing economies, we have our own peculiar challenges, which most first worlds don't really, can relate with, right? And generally speaking, so challenges are of different types, right? Irrespective of where you are, and because this is going far and wide, there are challenges that people will go through.
Yeah.
Whether you're in Canada, any part of the West.
Irrespective of the region, the country, right?
In fact, Bloomberg says that 8 out of every 10, startups will eventually fold up within 18 months, right? And the statistics are even worse, for developing economies, because there are peculiar challenges that they have to navigate in addition to all the ones
what other countries, people in other countries are going
have to go through. So, for example, startups in developing countries have to devote almost, maybe 60% of their resources into generating power. Now that's a lot of money, and that's money that you will have used to do so many other things.
And reinvest into the business,
right? Yeah. Secondly, access to loans, for example. If you're going to get, financial support from a financial institution or a loan granting institution around here, if it's not publicly funded, you are likely going to be looking at double digits. You're likely going to be looking at maybe 28 to anywhere between 28 and 38% interest per annum.
That's
huge. Compared to somebody who out of London or the US will just pay 3% or 4%. As the case may be. Now, so we're going back to the issue of being able to compete favorably, because the world is a global village now, right? So the product, the app that you're coming up with, or the service it is, somebody can procure that same product or service internationally by sitting down here, right? So how do you then compete favorably when you have all those challenges staring at you in the face? Okay, so there is access to funds. There's power issue. There's also technology, right? Access to technology. Internet, for example. How many people can have delivered to their homes or their offices, fast and broad-based internet? Very few people. So you have internet, and then you're doing what? Maybe if you can get 500 kilobytes per second, you're happy, right? People are taking, X-ray in the world, people are taking for granted, 22 megabytes per second, right? At speed. So sometimes you're communicating with people in the West, and they're like, send me this file, send me this your proposal, send me this your presentation, and they're wondering why is it taking so long?
Meanwhile, they don't know you are struggling.
Yes,
where you are because of the internet.
Exactly, and sometimes they can start to misinterpret that as sloppishness on your own side, or
lazy,
which is not the case. So when they are comparing with other people that have requested the same thing, from, and they are moving much faster, you tend to have those issues. So there are other things like the operating environment in itself, right? Because you have to deal with authorities, you have to deal with
government
policies, you have to do, and some of these are not very friendly. You understand? They're not catering towards the startups, right? Elsewhere, in developing economies, I think we can do much more in encouraging budding entrepreneurs by sitting down and saying, hey, how many people have you employed, right? In Nigeria today, where we speak, the unemployment rate has gone to 33%.
Wow,
that's nice. If you're talking about
actually off the roof.
Yes, if you're talking 200 million people, that's 66 million people out of that potentially can have gainful employment who are not having. Yeah, you can discount that with on the age and all of that. But the point is made about the size, the enormity of that number.
Size,
many countries in the world are not even up to that, the number of unemployment we have. So if you are able to displace a few people from that statistic, I think government should encourage entrepreneurs by giving them tax holidays, by giving them incentives, by giving them access to funds, at cheaper rates and all of that, right? On paper, some of these things exist, but in execution, you don't have access. You hardly have access to that, right? So that is the prevailing condition within which these guys find themselves having to operate. So I was having a conversation with, a partner outside the country, and she said, if you can succeed out of a developing economy, I have no doubt whatsoever that when you come to the West, you're going to excel.
Exactly.
And that's the story you hear about Nigerians all over the world.
Like they say, if you can survive in Nigeria, you survive anywhere in the world. Looking at what you just said now, is there a way that someone, you mentioned Nigeria, can actually overcome all this?
Yes.
Can you mention a few?
And it's happening every day. Yeah. Companies are starting up and they are circumventing these challenges or surmounting these challenges, and they are excelling, right? You just have to do a lot more, than your counterparts elsewhere in the world, right? You have to be more creative, So, do I have to start? Do you have to rent an office to start? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So many people make the mistake of comparing themselves with others and see other companies who are thriving and doing very well and already have offices and vehicles and a retinue of staff, and you think, oh, why can't I do the same thing?
You're just starting.
Or you're just starting. You need to look at your own resources and how best to optimize them, right? So the straightforward way to answer your question is absolutely yes, right? One thing that I've discovered makes a difference is the mindset with which they approach the business.
Okay.
The people who excel are those who don't have the entitlement mentality, and the people who are ready to work right beyond their peers or outperform expectation. When you're providing a service to your client, you need to sit back and say, what are my own strategic advantages, right? Which is what will deliver my competitive edge, and how do I then go and convert that to value? Do you understand? So, for example, I tell people, if you're a startup, right, you must not have a closing time as an entrepreneur, right?
Because you can't even afford to have
the world is a global village now. Are you shutting out the prospects that are outside of Nigeria?
Exactly.
So if you say that by 6 you switch off your phone or you can no longer be rich, that means you are excluding the guys in the West who are in the US or North America, who are 7, 8, 9 hours behind you.
Your evening is their own morning. So if you shut down, how are they going to reach you? How are they going to do business with you?
So you must go back again to my statement of the mindset is what are the paradigms that I'm bringing to the business? How am I approaching it? How am I my level of resilience my sense of industry, so I'm coming and saying, see, there's a period that I have to put in a lot of work sacrificially. When I finish paying the price, then I can replicate those same skills in other people, and then I can take a back seat and rest and allow the process to run. But until then, you have to delay gratification.
Exactly. And for all you know, it might be, for some people it might be 1 year, some people it might be 5 years, but no matter how long it takes, if you actually want that business to succeed, you should
you stay at it.
You stay at it.
You stay at it. Once you have refined and you have determined that's your value proposition from the outset very well, don't let the challenges then deter you. Do that.
Like you said, mindset.
Yes.
All start.
And then just keep at it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this brings us to the third question. Okay. How can an inspiring entrepreneur attract venture funding?
Okay, so I think the fundamental is to get your business plan very well articulated, right? I've had experiences where I've asked people who are seeking, venture capital, or angel investors, to say, why don't you come up with a nice business plan, and I'll even share templates, and they never came back,
Wow.
Yes, so there is a force, and this is the challenge with social media and with people who are not industrious and who fly by the night, businessmen, and people who are given to malfeasance and have corruptly enriched themselves and throwing a lot of money out on social media, and people who are looking and saying, hey, I know this guy, I was smarter than this guy in school. In some cases this guy didn't even go to school, like in the case of some of our politicians, and then overnight they are into stupendous wealth, and if you make the mistake of, misplacing your role models with those sort of,
you want to be like them.
You want to be like that.
Yeah.
And then you then face, some of the mindset issues of, being frustrated at things not happening.
When someone wants you to do the work to get the money, you're frustrated and you're saying, look at these guys, they're not doing anything. I mean, I know this guy, he didn't go to school.
Exactly.
I mean, why he's making so much money?
Yes.
So I want to be like him. Why should I do the work?
Yes. You need to go back and learn how to make sustainable wealth. And that's
the word, sustainable.
Yes. Yeah. That's one of the things that we've been doing a lot of in the last 4 years here. Even Zara Consulting has changed its core proposition to sustainable branding principles, and we also have other subsidiaries within the group. And what I've seen happen since my course at Harvard, where I went to really sit down to understand how to build sustainable businesses, is that you have to think long term. You have to already from the outset start thinking equiting the business to the next generation, because what you find here is that many Nigerian enterprises don't really go successfully beyond the first generation. Yeah, there are a few who have thrived and
like you said, very, very few.
But you really can. We don't have enough case studies,
And sorry to question. And in those few, you see that they want to hand the business over to their sons. But the question is, how qualified is your son?
Yes.
For that business?
Correct.
And there's someone else outside your immediate family who can run, that business.
Yeah. So, it goes back again to what we've been discussing and the criticality of sustainability, right? Is no longer, for 10, 15 years ago, sustainability used to be a fancy thing that you did after you became successful. You started thinking of, okay, so how do I think of corporate citizenship? How do I think of corporate social responsibility? How do I think of ethics and governance and issues like that? But right now, there's a business proposition is now what you need to do to even survive Yeah, sustainability is not what you do afterwards. There's a business case. There's a business case for sustainability now, and you need to sit down and say, okay, so why do I start to think long term? How do I start to put things in place that will not come back to harm me? How do I deal with regulators? How do I pay my taxes? How do I treat my people well? How do I do, things that are in the long term? Your supply chain, people that, a category of suppliers that people don't think about, right? People are now going back to make sure that, I have my supply chain security, by treating my suppliers well, I treated, people who are feeding into the pipeline of my integration properly, so that you can keep thinking and doing very well, right? So it's what they call, you do well by doing good. Do you get it, right? So you're not only doing well, you're doing good as well.
Doing good, yeah.
And it's by doing that good that you're actually doing well. Do you understand? So I recently read a book by a guy called David Gray called Giving It All Away, and it's pretty much sums up everything about. And I think that every entrepreneur should take a look at that book. It's how you think about the end in mind from the outset, and start to say, what kind of enterprise do I want to build? Do you get it? What am I going to do with success when it comes? What am I going to do with the revenues that I hope to generate? How do I want to make sure that everybody in the ecosystem is well treated and fairly treated, and equity is across board, right? And then you will then realize that by prioritizing those soft issues is when you are going to get your hard issues all straightened out, and your business will take care of itself because you are peculiar about the small
That's
details.
fundamental, right?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Now, I'd like to ask, at the early stage, should an entrepreneur focus on running the business alone to save costs, or build a team to help him or her grow?
So it really depends on the enterprise, the nature, and the service offerings. There are some that you really can run alone and outsource all your services, or most of your services, such that when you get the briefs and it's time to execute, you have a long list of consultants or agencies that can support you. Do you get it?
Yes.
You certainly may not require HR or IT or a CFO at the beginning stage. You can have those, and as you grow, you then start to layer in all those competences, right? However, there are also some service offerings that will require you to work with other people right from the outset to build a team, right? So if you're, there's some technology products that you will need people, so you need somebody who's a programmer, different from a UI UX person, a designer and stuff like that, right? And some of those products cannot finish on without the team members, right? And you can contract that with somebody who is a consultant, for example, or if you're opening an HR business, for example, you don't need a retinue of people, you understand, to be able to provide the service at the outset, right? So it depends on what works for, what you want to provide. And it goes back again to the writing a very good business plan, because you'll have tested those scenarios and seen the resources that you want. It also helps you have mentors who have navigated these terrains and can tell you immediately, what you need and some of the resources that you require.
Because they've been there for many years, they can tell you that the challenges
this is what to go,
this is what you need.
And when we were starting Zara, I had a conversation with a mentor, it was just, over a game of golf, and, he told me, whatever you do, don't hire heavy to start with, avoid, bank loans as much as possible, right? And then, go after resources and, assets in terms of, clients and all that way in line with your own core competencies, right? So you don't need to bring in too many people at the beginning, right? And then as you then grow, you can then be evolving and growing the end. Because this was me all thinking fancy and thinking, very big and wanting to deploy immediately and scale up, because I had a setting, that I was bringing into the business, right? And I would have been tempted, to make the mistakes that he made. And he gave me very practical examples of pitfalls that were very avoidable, and I really thank him up to today. I'm so grateful for some of those insights.
Wow, amazing. I don't know if you can just tell maybe like a few examples of businesses that can run alone and then businesses that should start with DT, maybe one or two.
So if you're typically in what they call self-employed, which is, is different from business ownership. If you're I'm a fashion designer.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm opening a salon. That's business that requires you to be hands-on physically. So pretty much you're employing yourself, right? You can do on your own. If you're a media buyer, for example, you're just buying media for people, or you're a singer, and stuff like that. You really don't need a lot of, people,
especially at the very beginning.
At the very beginning, do you get it? But if you're creating a technology product, like I said, some of them, there are some categories that don't require, a lot of people. If you're building an app, for example, you can finish it up to a stage. I had a startup in London that I worked with for about 5 years. So he was developing an app for the market here in West Africa, and it was not up until when it was about 80% done that he now started bringing in designers, started bringing in people, who can, marketers, people who could then test the product. So there are a lot of forums now that you can belong to, WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, dedicated forums, bloggers, and all of those things that you can go in and can actually help you test your products, right? So you can do your alpha, your beta testing without even knowing a lot of people and without having to pay a lot of money, for formal forums like, focal groups and stuff like that we used to do in those days, So there are all those sort of structures and enablers that exist, within the cyberspace already, and so they're very eager to provide you support because you would then be required to reciprocate when they want to do. Yes, so
as well.
That shared service, exists for many people and for almost every line of business, So think very quickly, identify the associations, the right set of partners, that exist and platforms that you can belong to, and then it can reduce your cost of whether product testing or ideation, or providing, ancillary services. Before, to do a very good advert, for example, you would need to go and book a studio, you need to write a script properly, you need to get a voiceover artist, a studio engineer, all sort of tons of
list of things to do.
Yes, but now you can go to a website, right, like Fiverr.com, and then you get somebody who will write a script for you, you get somebody who will do the voiceover, you get somebody who will animate it for you.
You don't have to stress yourself, just as long as you can pay them.
You don't even have to know them.
Wow.
That's a beauty.
That takes a lot of stress from you.
Yes, and collapses the time as well, and also frees you to then be able to concentrate on the core of things that you can't delegate. You focus on that.
Wow, amazing. I hope you guys are listening and you're learning from this one. I hope you have a pen and you have a paper and you're writing down all these amazing things that this man is sharing. Now, if you want to know more, please don't go anywhere. Please share with us ways that we can build a thriving business in Africa, especially in a developing country like Nigeria.
Okay. So, I think this, I mean, what applies in Africa will apply, anywhere in Asia as well. And some countries in South America as well, where the challenges are pretty similar, right? Again, you go back to the fundamental. What are the first things I have to do? I have to identify the value that I want to deploy. Once that is clear, you then estimate how much money you need, right, to be able to get off your feet very quickly. And then when you determine how much money you need, or resources generally, so it could be money and it could be non-monetary, then you need to determine how you are going to source for the fund. Now that's probably more important than even how much you need, because where you get your money from determines the kind of pressure that you will be under, right? And many times when you have over between 87 and 90% of startups or entrepreneurships collapsing in the first 5 years is often because of that pressure of where they're taking short-term loans to fund long-term projects.
And because it's short term, of course, the person who loaned you the money wants the money back, and you're under pressure to get the money.
Is not mature enough to be able to deliver the dividends enough for you to service the loan. All right. So you have to be very mindful. So we tell certain entrepreneurs to try, and if they don't have savings or reserve, try and get inexpensive money from friends and family members. Members, people who have other vested interests other than the pecuniary advantage that the business will bring to them, right? So once they can get cheap source of funding, it allows them, it gives them the breathing space to then be able to sweat their assets, to the point where they can make reasonable returns within a very good time. All right. So how much you need and how you're going to get the funds. All right. So for some very creative opportunities, you can actually get self-funding for it. What I mean is that the project themselves are so compelling that angel investors are interested, right? So many developing economies are starting to have creative hubs all over the place. Some are publicly supported, where governments have come to say, there's an opportunity, these are zones where people who are creative can come and thrive. And some are also private sector led, where people, as part of their own CSR strategies, have said they're going to support entrepreneurs in certain fields. Identify the opportunities that exist within your region, and then go after them. Yes, find out what the criteria for selection are, and then design your proposition along those lines. Do you understand? And I've seen a number of people, in fact, I dare say that we've worked with a number of people who have started out, around this spectrum of having people who they don't know, almost like a dragon den type pitches, to invest in them, and they become, very successful businesses. Wow. And I've seen also people who have come in at much bigger levels, right, where the ideas are so creative, and the solutions so pervasive, because many people need it, that they've attracted even international funding from the get-go.
Without even seeing you or knowing you.
Or knowing you, just from the value proposition alone. Because once you can transform lives, and you can demonstrate that you can build a sustainable business, and your financing, your financial models are in place, and you can show how you can generate enough revenue and profitability. Okay, because many people also focus too much on revenue generation. So on the gross, you are okay, right? But the margins are weak. You must be able to deliver.
Because for the business to be able to take care of it, so it needs to make
pay other people profit. Do you understand? Right. But one thing that I can't overemphasize, Anita, is that many investors now are looking at how your business is going to impact lives.
Exactly.
Not just generate a profit, unlike before, right? It's not talking about how it will transform lives. How many people are going to live better lives as a result of that your initiative? You know, either as those you're employing directly or those you're going to extend, you know, your
within
benevolence
your
to,
society or environment,
yes,
or
your
whatever it
communities
is.
and all of that.
Yeah.
And how are you going to be mindful? I don't want to get too technical, but how are you going to be mindful of, you know, environmental, social, governance issues and stuff like that? Yeah. And it's very clear. You start to see, once you start to see people who have this mindset, like I said, they're easily recognizable and they become outliers, you know. So the people, the discerning investors just go straight, you know, to those category of people.
I mean, who wouldn't want to invest in such a business?
Once it aligns with your own value system. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Now, we've seen and heard the negative impact of COVID on individuals, but do you think that COVID has affected the ways business is now being conducted?
I think it should be playing the ostrich. If you say that COVID hasn't disrupted businesses, entrepreneurship is about life, and COVID has disrupted, you know, life and living the way, you know, many people know it. I was discussing with a client just this week, you know, and they were telling me that the way they offer their own services have completely changed. Okay, in real estate, for example, what people perceive as homes have completely been revolutionized, because a home is no longer where you came to in the evening after you've gone to work, right? Or somewhere you stayed in during the weekends to play with kids. It's now where you live and work. So the concept of owning a home, or the things that you expect to see in a home to be able to deliver that comfort, you know, have changed completely. And so real estate service providers and brokers are looking differently, you know, to say, how has COVID affected what we do, right? Our consumers have altered their expectations, and you have to do
especially when you look back to 2020, when a lot of people were forced to work from home. So now you're saying they're trying to make that home more conducive, not just for living, but also working as well.
Yes. So if you didn't need, you know, a desktop, somewhere to work, somewhere to provide you power on a regular basis, now you do. So you're thinking of infrastructure. You need to get, you know, internet supplied to homes. You need to have broadband. So you're laying cables right from the outset, because you know that you would have to provide extra, you know, to be ahead of the next real estate, you know, around the country, right? So, you know, people are thinking sustainable power sources, they're thinking solar, they're thinking, you know, very far ahead, you know, in providing all those things. They're designing homes to be able to bring in a lot more ambient light, right, than before. So you're thinking, where does the sun
they're actually all the things that would have disrupted working at home.
Yes.
They're taking care of all that.
Especially in developing economies where you know that the reality is that people may not be able to afford to pay for electricity at premium rates, right? So you're thinking solar, you're thinking...
So instead of depending fully on electricity, we have alternative, which is solar.
Absolutely. You know, so that's just one way in the real estate, you know. So shopping, you know, we now shop very differently, right? People, there's a lot of deliveries being done. That were didn't exist.
You don't have to go to the market or to the supermarket. Stores were here. So you have things now delivered to you.
Completely. So, you know, so it has created certain new industries, you know, and some have suffered seriously, right? So transportation, air travel, hospitality, you know, people holidaying, all of those have reduced significantly, you know. The number of people who are frequent travelers, who have traveled in the last 2 years, well, maybe 18 months, right, have shrunk to about, you know, maybe just 7 to 8%. No, significantly compared to before. That these are non-business travels, right? So it's as low as less than 10%. So what you're seeing happening is that some industries are more adversely affected than others, but I think the key thing to draw out is that even in adversity, right, there are opportunities as well. People are identifying those opportunities, and that's what everybody should do. And taking advantage of it. So if you haven't thought of a business idea, those are areas you want to think about. Okay, how have things changed? What are the mannerisms, and the idiosyncrasies of the demographic that you want to target. Once you understand that, you then start to come up with value proposition and services to cater for that. If you are existing, you take a look at your business and say, how is it affecting me? Do you understand?
How do you do things
differently? How do I do
things
differently? So the way people consume information has also changed. People don't buy as much newspapers as they used to because people are very aware that or are conscious of touching the things that have been handed out. So the vendor has picked it, the distribution guy. So, do I really have to buy a newspaper? Can't I go
And also
online?
because you can actually get this information news online,
so,
using your phone, your tablet,
so that's whole newspaper that you will have bought. You can download it. For most sites are free to get those in the newspaper. Some you have to subscribe, right? But people are saying, I would rather stay safe, and subscribe and have to pick up. So you need to sit down. So if you are in the business of selling through traditional media and you still think that that's the way to go, right? You have to rethink all of that.
I would say in Nigeria, you're on your own.
So you need to sit down and think about it. And many people, so by now, we thought we would be using the phrase post-COVID, right? But with the new wave, new strains that have been identified, and some countries who are still under severe lockdowns, and the scourge is still very serious. It shows that you have to live past it and just don't wait until when COVID is all over before you then.
The question is, when is it going to be over? Exactly. No one knows.
So don't bother. That doesn't affect you. What you should be thinking of instead is, how do I, in spite of whatever challenge I'm saying, right, come up with my own strategies to excel. Because champions are not made out of comfort. You understand? It's during the times of challenges that you see the true champions emerge.
It's like the gold.
Yes.
You don't dig up gold like that.
Exactly.
Or you have to go through fire, refine.
Exactly. Yes. So why can't you be among the short list of people who are excelling despite the challenge?
And it's all about the mindset, like we said earlier. The mindset. So now this brings us to the last question. What advice would you give to someone struggling with their business?
So it depends on what the struggle is. There are numerous challenges that entrepreneurs face, right? But you can categorize them in buckets, So one of it is an ideas problem, right? I know it's a cliche now to say that, entrepreneurs don't really have financial problems, they have ideas problem, because money, will go after
the right idea
and stuff like that. But from my experience, it's been largely true. There are people who would support, very strong ideas, and also there are ideas now with technology that you don't really need a lot of money for to put out there. Do you get it?
Especially at the initial stage?
Yes. If you're selling, some of these fintech products that we have in Nigeria today, many of them, are from kids who are just out of school, right? We just come together and say, let's design something that is very compelling, for the financial payments, ecosystem here. And, they start up, and people recognize it immediately to say, this is a very strong, potential here,
And they're able to key in and then support financially.
Yes, and then eventually, a number of them have attracted even international funding very, very early. So it's not as if, it's because they know people, or it's because they were able to get a lot of money, or there was a money back somewhere, So let's go back again and talk about those ideas, stress test them, talk to your friends, your mentors, and make sure that is in place. Now, if the ideas are intact and it's not an idea problem, and it's indeed a financial one, you need to come back again, because that's a major issue in developing countries, because we just don't have as many financiers as we would love to, for things to go on, and the interest rates are not friendly as well. In fact, banks are not even want to invest in startups generally. The majority of banks will tell you if it's a start. In fact, they will ask you to bring your 5-year financial statement. So
if it's a startup, how am I going to bring it 5 years? Where am I going to get it from?
Exactly. So it goes back. So the money problem is real in many cases. So the idea is to start small.
Okay.
Start small.
Start small and grow big.
And grow big. In fact, start small whilst thinking big. Yes, there's nothing wrong with thinking.
So starting small and going your head.
You're going after.
Yes.
Oh, okay. One of my mentors started his business in his parents' garage with just 100 naira, right? And has grown it into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise today, right? So, and there are so many. I read a book by Moki Makura on Africa's leading entrepreneurs, something like that. Leading entrepreneurs in Africa.
Be sure to get here. This is the second book he's mentioning. Be sure to get these books and read them. If you're a serious-minded business person, it would help you.
Yes, and she chronicled successful businesses that have come from humble beginnings in Africa. And very inspiring stories of people who have then gone to do great things, who are like your everyday people, like you and I, like whoever is listening to this now, can say, oh, okay, I can be inspired and can move to do all of these things, and they will see how they started small and they started to scale up in a very sustainable way. So the few businesses that are in the top 2% or even the 1% of success are the ones who have been very deliberate and intentional about their growth strategy.
That's very key. You have to be deliberate, you have to be
absolutely, and then start to layer up and start to get big. Sometimes you can collapse several stages, right? After you have paid the price, or after you have set the foundation in place. Do you get it? So the foundation,
and then I think after you have also put sustainable structures in place.
There's nothing that then stops you from growing exponentially, right? After you have put those things. But if you are building a skyscraper, you must have laid the foundation for a skyscraper, right? If you are building a 2-story building and you lay the foundation for a 2-story building, for you to then be able to lay or build a skyscraper on it, you have to go back to the foundational phase, which is why I said.
So you can't build a skyscraper on
the foundation for a bungalow.
Very key. Very, 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 very key.
The other side, it's going to come down.
To crumble.
So think about it, but start gradually, right? There's a role that diligence plays, right, which we often miss, right? There's also the role where providence and divinity, the Almighty, plays as well.
The God factor.
The God factor.
Very, very important.
Combine the two to be able to maximize, the opportunities that you have. There's a role of favor. So, but what favor tends to do is to open the door for you. Right, exactly.
So if when the door is open, you need to be able to walk through the door.
Yes.
So if you see an open door and you
Correct.
refuse to walk in, I mean,
you take responsibility
exactly.
for it.
You must
And when
take
you
responsibility,
enter,
yeah.
what you then do as well in there is often a
Automatism.
product of your training, your capacity that you have built. Do you understand? That's why, one of the ways, and I think it's very important for me to say this because many times we, when I keep mentioning mentors and mentoring, you may think, I don't have access to one. The people I really admire, how do I get them to mentor me? Get their books, right? You can have mentors that I've never met, that don't know me and will never know me, right? May never know me, right?
Same here. I do have a lot of mentors. The key thing is, you see people who you want to be like, who are doing the things that you want to do. So you might be here in Africa and the person is in America or Canada or in the UK. So and you don't have access to them, like you said, get their books.
Yes.
And then you can also go to YouTube, listen, watch their YouTube videos, and there's so many ways. Follow them on social media.
That's right.
In this age of social media, you can follow them on LinkedIn, Instagram,
Facebook.
You don't have to meet them one-on-one.
Check out what they're doing.
Check out what they're doing, learn from their mistakes,
Yeah, so I think that's it. You have to just do what you have to do and do it properly and then get, So what we tend to do is just to identify any new area that we're going into, people who have gone in and excelled. Do you understand? A wise person once said that you should not be sluggish in your approach, but just, identify people you can imitate who, through patience and perseverance, have obtained the results that you are looking, for.
Yeah. And if they can do it, you can too if you follow
the principles.
Yeah, the principles. Very key.
It's the same because God is no respecter of persons.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, it's been an amazing session. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the wisdom, the information, the knowledge you're just dishing out, and I'm so sure that our audience are going to benefit from this. So thank you so much. So from Mr. Mecca, it's
goodbye, and I wish you every success that you wish yourself.
Wow, and then from me, it's bye till meet again.